Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer is present. Ms. Barnhart. Ms. Barnhart is present. Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines is present. Mr. Blankley. Mr. Blankley is present. Mr. Brew. Mr. Brew is present. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess is present. Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby is present. Mr. Delahanty. Mr. Delahanty is present. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman is present. Mrs. DeFlorio. Mrs. DeFlorio is present. Mr. Dondorfer. Mr. Dondorfer is present. Mr. Frazier. Mr. Frazier is present. Ms. Hasman. Ms. Hasman is present. Mr. Hebert. Mr. Hebert is present. Ms. Hughes Smith. Ms. Hughes Smith is present. Mr. Johns. Mr. Johns is present. Mr. Keller. Mr. Keller is present. President Lamar.
Here.
President Lamar is present. Mr. Long. Mr. Long is present. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci is present. Mr. McCabe. Mr. McCabe is present. Mr. Milne. Mr. Milne is present. Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris is present. Ms. Roman. Ms. Roman is present. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith is present. Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor is present. Ms. Vasquez Simmons. Ms. Vasquez Simmons is present. Ms. Vecchio. Ms. Vecchio is present. And Mr. Udelson. Mr. Udelson is present.
Please stay seated. I would like to introduce Father Bob Worth, parochial vicar of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini Parish, who has been invited by Legislator Dondorfer to lead us in a moment of prayer.
Hear me? Testing, test, okay. All right. So I'm going to give a two-line introduction to my prayer, and then we'll say it. I've been thinking a lot about recently the term common good. Common good. And I actually found a very brief definition of common good. So just see what you think about this. Common good is the totality of social conditions, allowing persons to achieve their communal and individual fulfillment. Pretty basic. So it's in the spirit of that that I offer this prayer. You are the one who gathers us, loving God. Blessed are you. You are the beginning and the end of our day. You bind us together in this place in respect, dignity, and trust. As we praise you this evening, we unite ourselves with our brothers and sisters throughout the world, with families, with the poor and the homeless, with the refugees and the oppressed, with the vulnerable and the forsaken, with the visionaries, the prophets, and the leaders, with the martyrs. We stand with and among them, waiting, eager to hear your voice. Let us hear you in the fresh beauty of this month's meeting. Let us hear you in each other. Let us hear you in unexpected places and from unexpected persons. Let us hear you in the quiet of our hearts and in the busyness and agenda of this meeting. We pray this evening, Lord, let us hear you. Amen.
Thank you, Father. I'd like to present you with this. Father, stand while Legislator Alcoffer leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Your copies of Day 4, April 11th, 2023 are now available on notice agenda. Without exception, the journals will stand approved as submitted. Legislators, the referrals submitted to the legislature for the next committee cycle are available on notice agenda as well. There are several proclamations scheduled this evening. Mr. Clerk?
Would Corinda Reeves please come forward? Also, County Executive Adam J. Bello, Majority Leader Steve Brew, Minority Leader Yaversha Roman, and President Sabrina Lamar. Never mind.
You want me to read it still? Do I read-
Would Mimi Lee and Lily Lee, as well as representatives of AAPI Heritage Month, please come forward? Also, County Executive Adam J. Bello, Legislators William Burgess, Susan Hughes Smith, and President Sabrina Lamar.
Yep. Whereas May signifies a national celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage in the United States, the first recognition of the AAPI community occurred in 1979 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. Then in 1990, Congress passed a public law designating the entire month of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And 2 years later, in 1992, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month unanimously became an annual designation. And whereas May was chosen for AAPI Heritage Month to acknowledge and commemorate May 7th, 1843, the arrival of the first Japanese immigrants to the United States, and May 10th, 1869, known as Golden Spike Day, which recognizes the completion of the first transcontinental railroad in the United States, built by significant contributions from Chinese workers. And whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders encompasses a large and diverse group of identities, including people with a heritage rooted in all Pacific Islands and all parts of Asia, including South and Southeast Asia, AAPI is used to describe a diverse and fast-growing population of 23 million Americans that include roughly 50 ethnic groups with roots in more than 40 countries. And whereas Monroe County has seen consistent growth in its Asian American and Pacific Islander population over the last several decades, the AAPI population in 1980 numbered roughly 5,400 people. And as of the most recent census, our community is home to 27,404 community members with AAPI heritage, an increase of over 350%. Monroe County is one of New York State's top refugee and immigrant resettlement locations, and it has been for several decades. And whereas commemorating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month will build awareness of the contributions the AAPI community has made here in Monroe County throughout all sectors of our community, including business, medicine, education, law, public service, science and technology, the arts, sports, and more. Now, therefore, we, Adam J. Bello, Monroe County Executive, Sabrina Lamar, President, Monroe County Legislator Susan Hughes Smith, Monroe County Legislator District 14, and William Burgess, Monroe County Legislator District 29, on behalf of the entire county, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Monroe County. The Monroe County Legislature recognizes Mimi Lee and Lily Lee, Opera Rochester. Whereas it is the sense of this legislature to honor individuals and organizations who make a positive impact in our community, and whereas attendant to such concern and in full accord with long-standing tradition, the legislature is justly proud to honor Mimi Lee and Lily Lee for their commitment to upholding and uplifting AAPI communities through their work with Asian Pacific Islander American Association of Greater Rochester, APA. And whereas Asian Pacific Islander American Association of Greater Rochester was founded over 20 years ago in April 2002, and where APA is a non-for-profit committed to collecting, documenting, and preserving the history of Asian Pacific Islander Americans in Greater Rochester, New York. And whereas APA is committed to a stronger Greater Rochester area community where diverse Asian Pacific Islander American peoples are valued in their heritage heritages and histories are preserved and celebrated. And whereas the work of APA has been highly regarded throughout the greater Rochester community over the last 2 decades through oral history projects, documentary heritage projects, and cultural and educational programs such as their 2023 APA Pi Pioneers, Innovators, and Entrepreneurs exhibit in the Link Gallery at City Hall. And now therefore let it be known that I, Sabrina Lamar, President, on behalf of the entire Monroe County Legislature, do hereby congratulate and honor Mimi Lee and Lily Lee on this 9th day of May 2023 during Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month for their commitment and dedication to preserving Asian Pacific Islander heritage and history in Monroe County.
We are thankful that you are all here with us to support us and be our backbone. And so on behalf of the Asian, the old and the new Americans with roots that are all over Asia, including the Pacific Islands of the United States and all the states in the United States, that we share and accept the spotlight. To remember that belonging is very important. It helps to stabilize the mental health of our debilitating country. So with that, we give thanks.
So I'm Mimi, and this is Lily, and we are sisters, the same family, and we are very honored to be here to receive this proclamation, to really realize that our country and our community is just as wonderful, as great as the individuals that make it up. So we applaud all of you because we are all here as immigrants, except for the Native American Indians. We all helped build this country. So we should celebrate all of us, every single one of us. And we are very happy to be here to celebrate with you. And if you get a chance, please go to the Link Gallery at City Hall and look at all the different honorees there. Their amazing stories will help to inspire, engage you, and empower all of us, especially the next generation of leaders. Thank you for having us.
Would Jeff Pierre please come forward? Also, County Executive Adam J. Bello, Legislators Yaversha Roman, Dave Long, Linda Hasman, and President Sabrina Lamar.
Monroe County Legislature recognizes Provider Appreciation Day, whereas it is the sense of this legislature to honor and celebrate the people and organizations that make Monroe County a better place to live. And whereas attendant to such concern, these legislators are justly proud to honor child care providers and Provider Appreciation Day. And whereas Friday, May 12th, 2023 is Provider Appreciation Day, which was started in 1996 by a group of New Jersey volunteers who wanted to recognize the tireless work of providers, and is presented by Child Care Aware of America. And whereas Provider Appreciation Day is celebrated the Friday before Mother's Day every year to recognize teachers, childcare providers, educators, and many others who provide care to young children. And whereas caregivers provide children with necessary social emotional learning that aids in the development of children while also providing love and care. And whereas Provider Appreciation Day is also a day to remind us of the faults and gaps in our childcare system and the strides we must make, including increased government funding, the need for more providers, and better wages for childcare providers to ensure they are also cared for. And whereas we recognize the work of organizations like the Child Care Council, one of the leading child care referral agencies in the country, who provide information, training, and resources to parents, child care providers, and businesses in Monroe, Livingston, and Wayne counties. And whereas they are important advocates for improvement in our child care system, funding, and hands-on actions, so that our children reap the benefits. Now, therefore, let it be known that we, Sabrina Lamar, President, Adam Bello, County Executive, Yaversha Roman, Minority Leader, Dave Long, Legislator District 16, and Linda Hasman, Legislator District 23, do hereby honor Provider Appreciation Day for the commitment to serving Rochester and Monroe County on this 9th day of May, 2023.
I just want to say thank you for this proclamation and to recognize the hard work that our child care providers have done for many years, helping to raise our children in our community. Child care is the backbone to so many different things, school, economics, work, for so many families. So our providers deserve this recognition, and thank you all for it. Appreciate it.
Would Britton Hargers please come forward? Also legislator Carolyn Delvecchio Hoffman and President Sabrina Lamar.
Go to the next one for now.
Would Sister Grace Miller please come forward? Also legislator Mercedes Vasquez Simmons and President Sabrina Lamar.
I got it.
Oh, thank you.
Monroe County Legislature recognizes Sister Grace Miller, whereas it is the sense of this legislature to honor and celebrate the people and organizations that make Monroe County a better place to live. And whereas attendant to such concern, these legislators are justly proud to honor Sister Grace Miller. And whereas Sister Grace has been a steadfast advocate for Rochester's poor, unhoused, and those facing housing and employment discrimination for over 4 decades. And whereas she founded the House of Mercy in 1984 after trying to find housing for 3 men when she spent the evening driving from shelter to shelter, but was told that there were no available beds. And whereas Sister Grace was able to use grant funding to eventually shelter more than 80 individuals each night and provide 9,000 meals every month to families and individuals who are hungry, offer social services, medical services, and more. And whereas Sister Grace continues to advocate for the poor and homeless and is working to create another lasting home for unhoused individuals called La Madonna della Strada, or Our Lady of the Streets, that can serve up to 100 individuals every night. And whereas the Catholic Courier called Sister Grace a good troublemaker for giving voice to the voiceless in our community. And now, therefore, let it be known that we, Sabrina Lamar, President, and Mercedes Vasquez Simmons, District 22, do hereby honor Sister Grace Miller for her commitment to serving Rochester and Monroe County on this 9th day of May, 2023.
I'm afraid I'll cry. Thank you so much for this great award. I am deeply honored. And I know there are many other people who are more deserving of this than I am, but I do thank you from my heart for this great tribute. I will always carry this nomination event in my heart. It'll always be with me. I want to thank all the special people in my life who have made this moment possible. I also want you to know how much you all mean to me. I was asked to say a few words. I'll try to keep it to a few words. In the months leading to 1985, I was on the streets. I saw so many homeless just hanging out with no place to go. I saw them hovering in storefronts, sleeping in outdoor benches, seeking shelter at bus stops, and so on, or just walking around with nothing to do. 1985 was an exceptionally bad winter. 3 shelters were opened up for the homeless. I picked up homeless and brought them to the shelters. Much to my shock, they were refused shelter. I was told the shelters were all filled up and there was no room. But I saw that there was plenty of room. These were gymnasiums. I asked the workers at the shelters to call other shelters to see if they would take them in. The responses were the same: no room. Finally, I said at the last shelter I was at, I'm not leaving unless you take the homeless in. Well, they didn't want me hanging around, so they took the homeless in. I went home that night, so grateful that the homeless had a place to stay. But all I could think of after the refusals was no room in the inn. They had done the same thing to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. This bothered me tremendously. I could not get over the lack of hospitality, the coldness, the lack of compassion, the lack of concern for 2 or 3 people needing help. That's when I thought, I have to open up a place for the homeless, where everyone and anyone will be welcome at any time of night or day. Then reality struck. I have no money. Then I remembered I'm a sister of mercy. I'll go to them and ask them for money. Gotta call. Sorry. Okay. Well, anyways, they offered me $20,000 for the year and said I was on my own. And that's when we immediately got busy and opened up the House of Mercy, first on Hudson Avenue, Central Park, Hudson Avenue, and Ormond Street. And now we have a homeless shelter there. But you all know that Rita and I were fired, leaving more and more people on the streets. And this is bothering us, and we're trying to get a homeless shelter for the homeless that are still on the streets. And we need help. We need money. And we're not going to stop until we have a homeless shelter that will take in all the people, all the homeless people on the streets. They are our concern. They are all our concern. And we need your help to do that. And so we're asking you to please help us to make this dream possible. Our homeless are in need of help. They are out on the streets. We see them every night. Please help us find an adequate home for our homeless.
I will now recess the legislature to hold a series of public hearings. I now declare open the public hearing on resolutions entitled Waiver of Residency Requirements for Monroe County Road Patrol Deputies.
No one is registered for this public hearing this evening.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I now declare open the public hearing on resolutions entitled Expanded Veterans and Cold War Veterans Tax Exemption.
No one is registered to address the legislature on this public hearing.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I now declare open the public hearing on resolutions entitled Expanded Volunteer Firefighters and EMS Tax Exemption.
No one is registered to address the legislature on this public hearing.
There being none, I declare this public hearing closed. I will now reconvene the May 9th, 2023 meeting of the Monroe County Legislature. There are no formal committee reports scheduled for this evening. We will now hold the public forum. We have several people registered to address the legislature. Mr. Clerk?
If you require assistance, a deputy is available to assist you in approaching the lectern. I will call 3 people forward at one time. Each speaker will have 2 minutes in which to address the legislature, and kindly conclude your remarks when the timer sounds and exit through the back of the chambers to my right. Thank you for your cooperation. And the first 3 speakers are Terrence Schnurr, Luther Lane, and Gene Wells.
The freedom of expression encompasses two complementary and equally important rights. The right to say what we choose to say, and the right not to say what we choose not to say. State actors should only intrude on fundamental rights when absolutely necessary and to the minimum degree absolutely necessary. If a legislator is going to launch a frontal attack on the First Amendment, there should be a more compelling reason than a personal compulsion to attract attention to oneself by conjuring a local angle on a news story that drew international attention precisely because it was and is an extreme aberration. The candidate compelled speech proposal should not be studied. It should not be amended. It should be spiked. Thank you and have a good evening.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, Sabrina Lamar, everyone in the legislature, Linda Hassman, Matt Goodles, and everyone. My name is Luther Lane. I am here today to submit a bill that I think that this county is really in need of. We are right now in a crossroads with so much with the election and everything happening. I really believe wholeheartedly, and I think all of this county and this community really, I believe, needs to with this election, with everything going on, I cannot figure out a way to solve this problem the way for what this community has gone through, let alone this country. So I have copies of the bill called approval voting, and the bill explains it all. Because we are approaching the 2024 election, and this community is in desperate need to change the voting system here and to make it more so people have more of a say. This is really important to me, and this is really important to the community. When this bill is submitted to you guys on your desk, please do all you can to pass this bill, regardless of partisan effort, because this community and the lives of this community and this county depend on it. I would also like to take the opportunity really quick to request a proclamation, especially for those who are in the town of Brighton. In June of 2020, I was an actor in a movie called Clowns of the Woods. It's a horror movie that was written and produced by filmmaker Adrian Esposito, Nomeka. Nomeka spelled N-O-M-I-E-K-A, and Espo Cinema. If you don't mind, I'd like to take 15 extra seconds. And this movie I was a proud member of the movie. Adrian was known for his documentaries, for his autism, and for his hard work. And I believe that years later, now that's on Walmart.com, BestBuy.com, and all of that stuff, I ask you to please, if you are in the town of Brighton, to consider making a special proclamation known as either Adrian Esposito Day or Espo Cinema Day in the county of Monroe, if you are in the town of Brighton, please. But I do have the approval voting bill, and I will submit that right now. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Jean Wells and I'm from Arundecoit. I would like to speak to all of you concerning guardianships and how they affect our community, excuse me, and ultimately the cost to the county for Medicaid. A guardianship is to benefit the principal above all else. That is the main job of the guardian, to protect and carry out the principal wishes to the best of their ability. Secondly, to secure all assets, whatever that may entail. The court grants multiple avenues to collect funds that may have been misappropriated that did not benefit the principal. The guardian has the court's backing. What happens when the guardian does not fulfill these obligations and instead exploits the principal? Pretty much nothing. Families who've had to go through this experience find it very painful and often a divisive situation, separating them from the principal, their loved one. In my mother's case, there were 3 different financial guardians in 4 years, and my mother was found competent, which often is not the case. Money is the #1 motivating factor for guardianships, how it's acquired and how it is spent. In my mother's case, her funds were drained and not for her benefit. All 3 guardians refused to hold the POA who had financially exploited her accountable. In the 4 years, 15 months were spent in court. It involved 21 people or agencies. Only 6 were for my mother's benefit, who fought relentlessly to stop the exploitation. We still don't have the full accounting, but at this time, between attorney and guardian's fees, my mother paid $264,000. Now there's no money left. Medicaid was needed for her care. When the guardian applied for Medicaid, we believe a 5-year look back did not occur. If it had, it would have found the tens of thousands that had been exploited and should have been returned. COVID caused a lot of rubber stamping, and I believe that would pay the county to go back and look over the guardianships that were granted. Medicaid, and if a proper look back was executed, I have turned over 140 pages of documentation requesting an audit. If my mother had not been placed on Medicaid, she would not have died under despicable circumstances in a poorly rated nursing home. My mother is only one of thousands who have been exploited by guardianships. The county is the loser. When principals die, there is no money left to pay back the Medicaid. Thank you very much.
Our next 3 speakers are John Randall, Glenna Chance, and Sarah Stradley.
Hi, my name's Glenna Chance. I'm here talking about smart meters again. You should access stopsmartmeters.org or NYSUMA, which is New York Safe Utility Meters Association, for scientific fact regarding the dangerous smart meters. I encourage you to also go to the RG pop-ups. I just came from one in Penfield. You need to show up there. There's power in numbers. RGE states without scientific substantiation that these meters are safe. Public relations is not physics. As they say, you are entitled to your own opinion, but not to your own set of facts. And according to the precautionary principle, where there is risk, the burden of proof is on, in this case, RGE, to prove there is no risk. The RGE President CEO states that there will be no waiver of the punitive opt-out fee for any reason, including medical. This is a violation of ADA law, as punishing the disabled solely based on their disability is illegal. ADA law is federal law, so I have engaged Chuck Schumer's office to address this discrimination with RGE, which they promised to do. They need to hear from as many constituents as possible, so please do your part and contact them. It is a simple local phone call. I've given heads up to personal injury attorneys that injury from these meters will be the next Camp Lejeune, and to inform themselves at stopsmartmeters.org. They have been receptive. Once you and your family are debilitated from these meters at home or at work, if you allow them, call a personal injury attorney. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Stradley, and I am a senior at Webster Schrader High School. Today, I'm speaking about an issue that is really important to me regarding deforestation. As many of you already know, deforestation is the action of clearing a wide area of trees. There have been many studies showing the harmful effects it has on climate change, air quality, and the threat it poses to ecosystems. One way to combat this issue is reforestation, which includes tree planting. Reforestation is not a solution to deforestation, but it can help in the long term to reduce the negative impacts of it. For example, it accelerates the process of reestablishing a healthy forest structure, and it helps reduce CO2 levels, which mitigates effects of climate change. Given that Rochester already has a climate action plan underway, it is clear that this issue is important to our community. Therefore, I am proposing a simple but effective solution that not only helps with deforestation, but also aligns with the community-wide climate action plan. That is, I am requesting that tree planting become mandatory for all new homes that are built in our county. Many towns like Mendon, Fairport, and Webster do not have any laws in place requiring them to replant trees after new builds. For a 1,500 square foot home, an average of 30 to 75 trees are cut down according to billiontrees.com. For a 500 square foot apartment, an average of 10 to 20 trees are cut down. Some cities are already addressing this issue in our state. According to the New York City Parks Department zoning text amendment, all new buildings and all enlargements exceeding 20% of the floor area must have one new tree for every 25 feet of the building road frontage. I am proposing a similar concept in our region. I suggest a countywide mandate that building companies be required to replant at least 1 to 2 trees after every new build as a way to combat deforestation. Besides benefiting the environment, this plan would not cost any money for the county to put in place. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
Our next 3 speakers are Tom Smith, Carmelo Crassi, Alan Blair. Do you mind if we just switch up what order we go? We're all talking about the same issue. Awesome.
Hi, my name is Alan Blair. I'm here on behalf of Rochester for Energy Democracy, and Rochester for Energy Democracy is here on behalf of the people of Monroe County. We didn't mobilize for tonight because we're building power in other ways right now, but we wanted to check in, clarify some misinformation, and prepare to pass legislation for an implementation study ASAP. Life's not good if you're a low-income RG&E customer. You're already paying 15, 20, even 25% of your income for utilities. That's common in Rochester. Even when everything goes right, some months you're deciding whether you can go without food or medication to keep the lights on and the heat on. But way too often, RG&E makes a mistake and overcharges you. Then you have to make some tough choices. RG&E customer service is so lousy that it can take hours to sort out, sometimes a lot longer. If you spend that time during work when you can actually reach a customer service rep, you lose your job. But if you can't fix the problem, then you can't pay what they say you owe, and they might shut you off. That can get you evicted. Sadly, evictions like this happen too. RG&E billing and customer service is bad enough to get statewide attention. The speakers going after me will talk more about this, but the PSC has fined them millions for service fiascos. Incompetence? Likely, but it's also definitely greed. Last year, RG&E sucked $100 million out of our local economy to reward their parent company and shareholders. RG&E talks up their so-called long history in the community, but that ended in 2008 when the Spanish multinational Iberdrola bought them out, which was illegal before the 1990s, by the way. Iberdrola, in turn, is owned by bad actors like BlackRock and the government of Qatar. When we go public, we can reinvest that $100 million in lost profits into lowering rates and bringing back outsourced union jobs. We can invest in a green transition, affordable for everyone, and build equity as we pay out the buyout price. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Thomas Smith, and I'm a homeowner in Gates and volunteer with Metro Justice. RG&E has had a history of failures that have drastically increased since being purchased by the Spanish conglomerate Iberdrola in 2008. While RG&E likes to put on a good face when cameras are there, issues for users have not changed. If you look across the areas where Iberdrola is active, they have a dismal record of illegal activities and a company culture of paying fines rather than following the law and building that into the cost of doing business. We can see this in their non-compliance with regulatory requirements. They have no plans to comply with New York State's climate law passed in 2019. 4 years after the CLCPA was passed into law, the company has yet to conduct a full compliant greenhouse gas emissions inventory. They are not meeting targets for efficiency or heat pumps or the requirements for a proportion of funds going to low and middle income customers, which are at 6% when it should be at 20%. RG&E is failing to even plan for measure current impacts on disadvantaged communities or carbon-related climate impacts needed to address emission reductions as set forth in this New York State climate law. Additionally, a panel of state agencies responsible for determining if RG&E's expenditures are necessary and a good use of ratepayer money had the following things to say. The panel found it to be difficult to find consistent and detailed information in its review of the proposal, and that RG&E provided vague, inconsistent answers or just flat out failed to provide necessary documentation. And thus the panel had no way of determining whether RG&E's cost estimates were reasonable. When they were explicitly asked to provide this information to verify that the requests for ratepayer money, our money, was credible, they responded that it is impossible to accurately estimate the time and materials needed to complete the project. They have a history of this from their 2019 rate increase and a 2016 audit. Because they are only accountable to foreign shareholders and not local ratepayers, they are running the company into the ground as they strive for more profits. Thank you for listening.
My name is Carmelo Crassi, and I'm a Red volunteer and live in Churchville. I'm here to correct several points of misinformation and reiterate 3 central reasons why a publicly owned utility makes a huge amount of financial sense for our region. First and most obvious, a public utility would be not for profit, so we wouldn't be seeing $100 million a year leave our community to a multinational company. Second, we currently pay for all RG&E's costs plus a guaranteed rate of profit. There's nothing magical that they're bringing in terms of investments. They're just disinvesting in our grid while charging us way too much for terrible service while we don't even know what's going on. Key here is that a public utility can borrow at about half the cost of an investor-owned one. So while it is true that the grid needs improvement, the quicker we can transition to a public power, the more transparent and cheaper that will be for us. Third, in New York State, public utilities have preferential access to cheap renewable power in the New York Power Authority. With the recent passage of the Build Public Renewables Act, there will be much more public renewables and an expanded base of cheap power that is only directly available to public utilities. An additional fear and stated obstacle is that with a public utility, local governments will lose the property tax revenue of RG&E. We tried to emphasize while meeting with you last, but again, the Red campaign is committed that in this transition, no revenue of public institutions is lost. There is a standard practice for the payment in lieu of taxes in these situations, and these commitments are built on our draft RFP. Additionally, some very large numbers have been circulating about the possible valuation of RG&E. These numbers are clearly inaccurate because they are based on buying out RG&E in a 9-county area versus in Monroe County. To get an accurate assessment, we need to move forward and commission a study to assess RG&E's assets, as well as important information such as a rate of structure that will allow us to pay off these assets over time and still save money. Thank you.
Our next 3 speakers are Dr. Michelle Wunderlich, Courtney Christen, and Rita Lewis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Michelle Wenderlich. I'm the organizer and policy specialist for Metro Justice's Rochester for Energy Democracy campaign and a resident of Rochester. An implementation study process requires significant research into public utilities and the utility sector in general. Metro Justice has been researching public utility transitions and implementation studies since 2019 and writing our own draft request for proposals for more than 2 years to be the basis of the work of this committee. We are connected with national, local, and regional experts to understand the complexity of the undertaking and what is necessary to commission an implementation study that is worth the money and gives us the financial and technical information we need for a successful buyout, but also develop implementation plans for workforce, energy planning, social policies, governance, and other areas to make sure the new utility is set up to succeed. In fact, we have gotten feedback from national experts that our draft is well-written, well-researched, and covers the right questions and tasks needed for a successful study. The community deserves a comprehensive study with integrity. As the grassroots organization that has engaged most local residents on utility issues and built the movement for a public utility, through rigorous research and organizing, Metro Justice has an irreplaceable expertise in public utilities and an irreplaceable commitment to representing our community's best interest. We also provide necessary technical expertise, unique experience, and research capacity needed. I myself have a master's in public policy and a doctorate around issues of public utilities and was involved in a municipalization process in Berlin, Germany, as well as holding a utility accountable to community process in Minnesota. Metro Justice needs to be represented on the RFP committee, along with other key stakeholders, such as organized labor, and our draft should serve as the baseline of discussions. The issue of community stakeholders on RFP and other committees is not a legal issue, but a policy one. There is no state procurement law that limits community stakeholders on RFP committees. We look forward to working with you all to vote on moving forward an implementation study with fair oversight and expert community representation before the end of spring. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Courtney Kristen. I'm a homeowner in the city of Rochester. I teach community engaged leadership at the University of Rochester, and I'm a volunteer with Metro Justice. I moved back home to Rochester last year and was looking for a way to make a difference in the community. Metro Justice's Rochester for Energy Democracy campaign is where I choose to spend my time. New York state law states that with an implementation study and a positive referendum, RG&E would be forced to sell to the public. The idea is for the new utility to be publicly owned and have public oversight with an elected board, but continue to be run by the current staff and independent professionals who would now be aligned with our community's values rather than that of a multinational company. I urge you not to write off this initiative as too big of an undertaking or waiting for external funding for the implementation study. This campaign has resonated with every constituent I've spoken to, Democrat, Republican, independent, young, old, city or suburbs, rich or poor. We are in a time in our country where pride and morale are low, poverty is high, divisiveness reigns supreme, and politicians are not trusted. People are tired of red versus blue ego trips and are looking for policymakers to enact legislation that will better American lives. We are in need of a focus on our local communities for the overall advancement of society. The philosophy is simple. Our local community should own our power instead of renting it from a company in Spain. With an implementation study, a referendum, and then a buyout financed through bonds paid back over time collectively by our paid rates, not by taxes, we can save money and have an energy system that serves our community. You have an opportunity to make a difference. You can leave a legacy. We, the people of Monroe, would love to help to make this happen, and let's work together. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Sister Rita. I have worked with Sister Grace for many years, caring for the homeless in our community. There is currently a void in our community. There are far too many people left outside. homeless, hungry, and without proper clothing. This past winter, I was with people in the community who were very concerned about the ones who were still outside in the cold, snowy nights. I was part of that group that went out looking for the people and brought them inside to a temporary place that kept them warm and they were well cared for. But now people are outside. People are hungry. And we see them and we know they're there. And some of our people from La Madonna de la Strada do go out and bring lunches to them. But sadly, we don't know where to bring them for shelter because the shelters that are currently operating will not accept them. So there is a need for another shelter. There is a need to provide for all of our brothers and sisters, all of our citizens of Monroe County, a place where they can be, where they are welcomed and cared for as they need. And this is something that we can do. We simply need political will to do it. There are people in this community willing to step in, roll up their sleeves and do the work that needs to be done. So I just hope we will be partners and really solve the homeless situation here in our own community. Thank you.
Our last three speakers are Preacher Adams, Asia Adams, and John Randall.
Good evening. My name is Minister Adams. I'm an advocate for the poor. I go out every day. Let me tell y'all something. We are Christians. It's a shame before God that some of us don't want to help the poor. But you better believe this, God see everything that we do. We can end homelessness, but we need your help. You are politicians. You work for us. You work with us. We put you in here and we can get you out of here. The last time I stood up here, I told Cheryl that Norfolk, Deuteronomy 15, 7, and 8 says, the poor is in need, but the rich won't live. I got tired of Sister Grace crying. The last time I told her, I said, ma'am, the next time that you see me, you won't be over this county ledge. Trust me, we beat her by 6,000 votes. Tell me what God can do. Listen and listen good. You are lawmakers. Stop voting on your feelings and vote with your heart. We come here asking for help because we need help. The La Madonna La Strada, we just starting, but we're gonna make a difference in this county. And before I take my seat, I want to say one thing. Homelessness can be solved. Our problem is this. We need your help. Don't turn away when we're asking for your help. Because the problem is this. You need us just like we need you. God see everything. God bless everybody in here. Because you know what the preacher said? I love what he said. We can end homelessness. Everybody have a blessed evening.
This concludes the public forum.
We will now proceed with the consideration of local laws. Will the clerk please read the first item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 23-0031.LL, providing that local law entitled amending chapter 323 of the Monroe County Code be lifted from the table.
Moved by legislator Hasman, seconded by legislator Blankley. This is to lift from the table. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 2, referral 23-0031.LL, providing that local law entitled amending chapter 323 of the Monroe County Code be adopted as amended.
Moved by legislator Hasman, seconded by legislator Blankley. This is to adopt as amended. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, legislator Brew.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd like to explain my vote. I will be opposing this referral today to ban outdoor vaping in Monroe County parks. When talking with my constituents, not a single person has complained to me about outside vaping being a problem in our parks. The people I talk to care about tackling inflation, New York State's high taxes, fixing potholes, and dealing with high crime facing our communities. It is no wonder why people think politicians are ineffective if we are working on behalf of the taxpayer to debate items such as this. So why are we deciding to focus on this ban? This vote today stems from Kathy Hochul recommending counties take action on this while she herself chose not to do so. And to make matters worse, her administration and my colleagues in this legislature failed to provide any scientific reasoning for this proposal. As I said in committees, outdoor charcoal grills emit more harmful secondhand toxins than outdoor vaping. I admit that harm can come from secondhand vaping inside in indoor areas. However, the focus of this bill is to ban vaping in an outdoor context, an important distinction to highlight. If this passes, the next step for this honorable body to start banning charcoal grills, gas-powered vehicles, or punishing working-class Americans who cannot afford electric vehicles who own gas stoves, or would families no longer be allowed to have cookouts together in our beautiful parks? Under the same reasoning of this proposal, my colleagues could use the same for all of the above. The logistics of this law do not even make sense since there is no enforcement mechanism in place. A law without scientific support, no enforcement, and in the face of no constituent support seems to me more like virtual signaling than an act of protecting public health. Even if there was an enforcement mechanism, I know our brave members of law enforcement have more critical issues to face, such as homicides, smash and grabs, robberies, and all the true crimes we see in our daily news feeds, not stopping vapors walking along park trails. It is bad enough that New York already has a reputation for being a state that restricts its citizens' freedoms. However, it is clear today that the anti-liberty agenda has reared its ugly head here in Monroe County, and this is something I cannot support. For my colleagues who support this, I am grateful that you were able to reduce the scope of this referral and at least make it focus more on what I believe is the real intent of this legislation, which is to protect our children. And for that, I am always thankful. However, for the reasons above, I personally believe the original intent has been lost. For all the reasons I've mentioned, I will be voting against this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, legislator Brew. Go ahead, legislator Smith.
In support of this local law that has come to be through an important bipartisan compromise in prohibiting the use of electronic cigarettes within certain areas of Monroe County parks. While the science behind the long-term effects of vaping have still yet fully to be studied, particularly in outdoor settings, early indications shows that secondhand vape is harmful to people's health and is a poor example to our youth. That is why I felt this legislation was important and worth negotiating a compromise that could garner bipartisan support. While I personally believe the amended legislation before us strikes an even balance, I do sympathize and understand the concerns of those who oppose this legislation. With all laws, there must be a balance, and in this case, a balance in consideration of allowing adults to make their own decision when not impacting others, a key element of the personal liberty of which I fully support. But that is why last month I worked across the aisle with the sponsors of the legislation to find the middle ground, and I want to personally thank those on both sides of the aisle who helped find this compromise, particularly Legislator Hasman, who reached out to start this process. In doing so, we have unanimously amended the local law to focus on the areas of the park that are more likely to have our children there, such as the playgrounds, the aquatic areas, and the zoo, while continuing to allow people to make their own decisions when impacting others. For example, if they're alone out on a trail or in a distant open area. I'm proud to have come to the bipartisan agreement with this local law that keeps kids safe while not forgetting about the personal liberties afforded to all Americans. I hope that all of my colleagues will join with me in voting for this compromise solution while fully understanding the reasons that some may not. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Go ahead.
I too would like to explain my vote. In the process of service within this legislature, there are often subject matter we consider where the vote is clear. There are some votes for one reason or another that may not be as clear, and for some legislators, she or he may feel their vote could truly go either way. I am challenged to vote in favor of this tonight as I believe it will almost be impossible to monitor or enforce. We surely do not have an abundance of road patrol officers that will be readily available to respond to a complaint of a person vaping within a park while walking on trails or even within 100 feet of the playground, beach area, concession area, etc. We are all aware that there is much more crime throughout the county daily than to worry about this. There are those, however, that will state that this is yet another infringement on citizens' rights. And while I understand and respect that, I also believe that those that don't smoke or vape have the right to be free of that smoke, odor, etc. For this legislator's consideration, it is my opinion that around playgrounds, pavilions, sports fields, and other areas, all smoking, including vaping, should not be allowed. This is something that many smaller municipalities have considered and approved. But again, this is in much smaller park areas and often in parks that are almost fully sports fields, pavilions, playgrounds, and similar. While I do not see this as being something that will be controlled in the larger Monroe County parks, I do believe that we must try to set an example for our youth and younger adults and our own children and grandchildren. I do believe that around the area set forth in this specific resolution, disallowing vaping is the right thing to do, and I will vote in favor.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Milne. Is there any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Roll call vote. Mr. Brew. Mr. Brew votes no. Ms. Roman. Ms. Roman votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer votes no. Ms. Barnhart. Ms. Barnhart votes yes. Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines votes yes. Mr. Blankley. Mr. Blankley votes yes. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess votes yes. Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby votes no. Mr. Delahanty. Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman. Yes. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio. Mrs. DeFlorio votes no. Mr. Dondorfer. Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Mr. Frazier. Mr. Frazier votes yes. Ms. Hasman. Ms. Hasman votes yes. Mr. Hebert. Mr. Hebert votes no. Ms. Hugh Smith. Ms. Hugh Smith votes yes. Mr. Johns. Mr. Johns votes yes. Mr. Keller. Mr. Keller votes no. Mr. Long. Mr. Long votes yes. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci votes yes. Mr. McCabe. Mr. McCabe votes yes. Mr. Milne. Mr. Milne votes yes. Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris votes no. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor votes yes. Ms. Vasquez Simmons. Ms. Vasquez Simmons votes yes. Ms. Vecchio. Ms. Vecchio votes yes. Mr. Udelson. Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Lamar.
Yes.
President Lamar votes yes. 22-7. Local law passes. Item number 3, referral 23-0097.LL, providing that local law entitled waiver of residency requirement for Monroe County Road Patrol deputies be lifted from the table.
Moved by legislator John, second by legislator Dondorfer and legislator Smith. This is to lift from the table. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 4, referral 23-0097.LL, providing that local law entitled waiver of residency requirement for Monroe County Road Patrol deputies be adopted.
Moved by legislator John, seconded by legislators Dondorfer and Smith. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, legislator Dondorfer.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to explain my vote. Unfortunately, public safety has been under threat nationally and locally. People simply do not feel safe and their sense of security that they used to, and this stems from the increased crime in both the city of Rochester that has spread to our suburbs and our county as a whole. To put it plainly, our law enforcement need all the support, resources, and staffing that we could provide to them, and they need it now. Combined with other legislation, such as recently announced the expansion of the sheriff's office, the establishment of the Regional Investigative Operations Center, and more, we can continue to make meaningful impact to help our sheriff's office and keep our community safer. One common sense and simple solution to further these efforts is this legislation before us now to waive the residency requirements for our Monroe County Sheriff's Road Patrol deputies. This purpose expands the talent pool of applicants, which will help our sheriff recruit faster and will assist in staffing shortages that we currently experience. There's no logical opposition to this needed change. For those who worry that outsiders joining the sheriff's office who do not share our local values is not valid when you consider that those living in neighboring Ontario and Macedon would likely have more in common with people who reside in Webster and Perrington, in contrast to those who live in Hamlin and Brockport. This will improve the cohesion of our sheriff's department and not the opposite. I encourage all of my fellow legislators to join in supporting our law enforcement, bolstering our public safety, and supporting this common sense piece of legislation. Thank you.
Legislator Barnhart.
President Lamar, I just want to explain my vote. I have at least one very close friend and a few constituents who are pretty adamant that they do not want me to vote yes on this law. But there is very limited evidence that residency requirements make any difference on the quality of policing or police community. A lot of research supporting this. And there are other Monroe County workers who are not subject to residency requirements. I do believe that management level and cabinet level workers must live in Monroe County, but I don't believe that this should apply to lower wage workers and union workers. So I will be voting yes in support of this law.
Thank you, Legislator Barnhart. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Roll call vote.
Roll call
Or is
vote. Mr. Brew. Mr. Brew votes yes. Ms. Roman. Ms. Roman votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Ms. Barnhart. Ms. Barnhart votes yes. Mr. Baines. Mr. Baines votes yes. Mr. Blankley. Mr. Blankley votes no. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess votes yes. Mr. Colby. Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahaney. Mr. Delahaney votes yes. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman. Ms. Delvecchio Hoffman votes no. Mrs. DeFlorio. Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer. Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Mr. Frazier. Mr. Frazier votes yes. Ms. Hasman. Ms. Hasman votes yes. Mr. Hebert. Mr. Hebert votes yes. Ms. Hughes Smith. Ms. Hughes Smith votes no. Mr. Johns. Mr. Johns votes yes. Mr. Keller. Mr. Keller votes yes. Mr. Long. Mr. Long votes yes. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci votes yes. Mr. McCabe. Mr. McCabe votes yes. Mr. Milne. Mr. Milne votes yes. Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris votes yes. Ms. Smith. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor votes yes. Ms. Vasquez Simmons. Ms. Vasquez Simmons votes yes. Ms. Vecchio. Ms. Vecchio votes yes. Mr. Udelson. Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Lamar.
Yes.
President Lamar votes yes. 26-3, local law passes. Item number 5, referral 23-0100.LL, providing that local law entitled Expanded Veterans and Cold War Veterans Tax Exemption be lifted from the table.
Moved by legislator Hebert, seconded by legislators Alcoffer and Keller. This is to lift from the table. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 6, referral 23-0100.LL, providing that local law entitled Expanded Veterans and Cold War Veterans Tax Exemption be adopted.
Moved by legislator Hebert, seconded by legislators Alcoffer and Keller. This is to adopt. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, legislator Keller.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of words in support of this. You know, as county legislators, we take an oath that's not dissimilar to the oath that I took when I enlisted. We have a duty and an obligation to serve our districts to the best of our ability, just as the brave men and women of our armed forces serve all of us. Tonight, through this legislation, all those supported are upholding their oaths as county legislators, just as our veterans have upheld their oaths. With bipartisan sponsorship, this legislation aims to expand the current tax exemption provided to veterans, including Cold War veterans. I'm proud to have supported all that we've done this year to help our most vulnerable through actions such as eliminating sales tax on clothing, expanding low-income tax exemptions, and tonight's expanded first responder tax exemption. Our veterans deserve our help as well, many of whom are our friends, neighbors, and colleagues in this honorable body, such as legislators Hebert, Alcoffer, and me. As veterans, we know how much this means and how much it will help some of our most vulnerable peers who are not exempt from pressures such as high inflation, states' high taxes. And many carry the scars of service to their legislation is a small token of our gratitude and our commitment. Every veteran of our community now and into the future offers the highest allowable tax exemption. I'm proud to support this legislation and thank all of my colleagues for doing so as well.
Thank you, legislator Keller. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 7, referral 23-0101.LL, providing that local law entitled Expanded Volunteer Firefighter and EMS Tax Exemption be lifted from the table.
Moved by legislators Downdorfer, seconded by legislator Smith. This is to lift from the table. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 8, referral 23-0101.LL, providing that local law entitled Expanded Volunteer Firefighter and EMS Tax Exemption be adopted.
Moved by legislator Downdorfer, seconded by legislator Smith. This is to adopt. Duly noted. Thank you, legislator Baines and legislator Mafucci.
Noted.
Is there any other discussion? Go ahead, legislator Downdorfer.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to explain my vote. I have been proud to support this legislation for several years now, and I was pleased to work together last year in bipartisan fashion, yet again, for this tax exemption for our hardworking first responders for the first time in Monroe County, and I'm proud to do so again as we expand these savings even further. Due to welcome changes in the state law, we are required to take corresponding actions to reflect those changes here in Monroe County. Don't worry, there's only a few pages and it's big print. Under this new expanded proposal, this exemption would extend to include unremarried spouses of firefighters or volunteer ambulance workers lost in the line of duty, as well as unremarried spouses of deceased volunteer firefighters or volunteer ambulance workers. Our first responders give so much to our community and sometimes the ultimate sacrifice, and their loved ones deserve the recognition and assistance for all that they do to help during the time of service and when they suffer the most significant losses. This is the least that we could do to express our gratitude to those who have served and are now serving, and can use this initiative as a tool to help recruit future first responders who we need now more than ever. Thank you to my colleagues here in the legislature on both sides of the aisle for your continued support of this legislation and for joining me which to show how much our first responders and their families mean to all of us in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Dondorfer. Legislator McCabe?
A flawed study from the New York State Firefighters Association from March of 2020 draws a misleading conclusion about the true costs of fire protection. Savings reportedly linked to volunteer fire departments and taxing districts fails to recognize the true problem. An alarm without properly equipped, staffed response brings no savings, and in fact, it creates extraordinary risks. I started in the fire service in 1990, and since then, what people do for work has changed. Volunteers can no longer respond to emergencies while full-time jobs in another community. Their response to a blaze or a roadside may take 20 minutes or more. Today's emergencies demand a well-trained response. Firefighters are facing toxic train derailments, lithium-ion battery fires, and exposure to airborne contagions and viruses. The notion of a community-oriented volunteer responding around the clock when the numbers are dwindling are not supported by the facts. A new approach to emergency calls using combination department model that's used in many parts of this county and in some parts of the state where career firefighters with specialized training support a volunteer roster. This simultaneously provides the necessary protection, delivers lower insurance rates, and saves lives and property. A vague proposal to bolster volunteer recruitment is not the answer. Now is the time to bring together state and local officials with full-time first responders and volunteer fire companies to prepare for the future and address the real problem. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator McCabe, go ahead, Legislator Baines.
I don't think that we should vote on. Asking for this. Authorizing legislation. Fire bill like half the counties in New York State. Record for a second.
Thank you, Legislator Baines. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Is it just the one, or should we go to a roll call?
Just the one, Legislator McCabe.
Here, so.
28-1, local law passes.
We will now proceed with the considerations of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk please, Legislator Brew?
I propose that we move the remaining agenda items as one, with the exception of the following. Referral items number 16, 18, and 25. Additionally, the 6 MOUs at the.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh, my bad.
Yep. Yep, that's the MOU. It'll be, we're gonna hit that one. So I'm sorry, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries.
Okay. Item number 16, referral number 23-0125, accepting grant from Genesee Transportation Council from Monroe County High Accident Location Program.
Moved by Legislator Morris, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Legislator Roman.
We're providing provided with a list of segment areas that would be worked on throughout this grant for this program. Just wondering how those areas were identified, and most specifically for me on the district which I represent. It's just alarming that there's only one Lake Avenue intersection. And I think we've seen pedestrian accidents Avenue. So I just want areas identified.
Chair, this program actually has 16 intersections, 31 segments, and 3 intersections that were carryover from a previous list. Basically, they're just locations that we keep an eye on that we know that there are problems.
So am I missing another list, or are we missing another list?
Through the chair, no, this is the current list. There's a previous list that we had from the previous grant that we've worked our way through, and this is a new updated list.
Like expound on why we look at or have a close eye on some of these locations.
Through the chair, it's more or less based on accident patterns, accidents, complaints that we get from residents, or somebody like a legislator lets us know that there's a problem and they want us to keep an eye on it. Many different sources come through us to look at these intersections, and we just kind of keep a running list of them. And then as we get this high accident location program going, these are the intersections we focus our efforts on.
I have a question. So when the information is obtained, what happens to it then? Who has that information?
Through the chair, could you explain what information?
So the study, the high accident location program is something like a study, correct? To examine the areas, for instance, like Legislator Roman said, on Lake Avenue, one specific area where a significant amount of accidents happen. Is that correct?
Through the chair, are you asking how we do the actual analysis?
Yes.
Through the chair.
I'm asking what happens to the information once the analysis is done.
Once analysis is done, we review it to see if there's any correctable accident patterns or any other correctable treatment that we can do in order to reduce accidents.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Legislator Hasman.
Does these data include simply not simply, but only automobile accidents, automobiles and pedestrians, bicycle accidents? Everything.
Through the chair, primarily just vehicle accidents, pedestrian accidents, and bicycle accidents aren't necessarily counted for or acknowledged in the accident reports that we get.
That may explain why there's not as many Lake Avenue intersections. That's purely conjecture on my part. I'm thinking out loud there. Okay, thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Go ahead, Legislator Hugh Smith.
Administration, why are we not including pedestrian and bicycle crash data in determining
Through you, Madam President, while Mr. Fries is, before he answers that, let me just point out one thing I think that might lead to a little confusion on this. This report is something that we do regularly. I believe it's every year that we do that. To the point of, say, at Lake Avenue, why is there only one intersection being contemplated for Lake Avenue? It's quite likely and probable that there were other intersections considered at other years with that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Senator Hugh Smith, you asked why the crash.
Yeah, I thank you, Madam President. I asked why we were not including pedestrian and bicycle crash data in our analysis of what intersections need to be addressed.
Through you, Madam President, in speaking with Mr. Fries, all accidents are considered as a part of this data. It would be automobile, pedestrian, and bicycle accidents. It's all looked at as accidents. They aren't necessarily specified out. They don't segregate the data separately with that, but it's all considered as one.
Thank you for the clarification. Through you, Madam President, to the administration, what is likely to be done to improve safety, to reduce crashes at these intersections? You know, what types of strategies will be employed?
Through the president, there are many different treatments we can do. For example, if we know we have a sight distance problem at a particular intersection, we might either add a stop bar or move the stop bar closer to the intersection so that the sight distance increases. That's just one instance. Other options we have are increasing the size of a sign, particularly. We can add retroreflective strips on the actual post to increase its so people can see it easier. We could increase the size of signal heads. We can add reflective backplates to the signals. There's a lot of different options we have at our in our toolbox.
Thank you. Through you, Madam President, to the administration, are you considering the particular needs of how best to address safety issues in relationship to the racial makeup of the community and the likely individuals who might be impacted by?
Through the president, not particularly. It's really just based on the accidents themselves, what's attributable to the accidents, and how we can counter the accidents.
Thank you. Madam President, to the administration, I'd like to point you to an article in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine called Disparities in Activity and Traffic Fatalities by Race Ethnicity by Matthew Reifman, MPP, and Amani Choma, PhD, published in 2022. Their analysis over a 3-year period was looking at the impact on different populations. And what the authors determined was that fatality rates per 100 million miles traveled are higher for Black and Hispanic Americans for all modes of travel, and notably higher for vulnerable modes, meaning pedestrians or cyclists. So the observed disparities remain
Number 16, just to discuss if we're accepting a grant.
So if the administration could please include some consideration to address racial disparities as they are looking to solve these locations, that would be helpful. In particular, lighting is cited as an important factor. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Item number 18, referral number 23-0127, amending 2023-2028 capital improvement program to add a project entitled Highway Preventive Maintenance Number 11 and authorizing contract with CPL Architects, Engineers, Landscape Architect, and Surveyor for engineering services and New York State Department of Transportation for the Highway Preventive Maintenance Number 11 project in the towns of Greece and Arundecoit.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to the administration, just a simple question. In the solve clause of the attached document to the referral, if I read it, it obligates the legislature to approve any cost overrun regardless of what the reason might be. Am I reading that correctly or incorrectly?
Through the president, you are correct.
Madam President, to the administration, is that the intent or is this a mistake in this reluctance to blanket check anything, to anything, ever? This.
Through the president, I believe it's a requirement of the funding.
Through you, Madam President, to the administration, when you say it's a requirement of the funding, please elaborate.
Through the president, there's the shares are broken up into three different parts. 80% is federal, 15% is state, and 5% is Monroe County. And in order to achieve this grant, we have to acknowledge the fact that we will pay our 5% of the cost of the project. We have to do that in order to get the other 95% paid for.
Thank you, Madam President. Administration, that's not what this says at all. This talks about cost overruns and implies that we have to agree to that right now, whatever they may be. Am I wrong again?
Through the president, you are correct.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Through to the administration, in this highway preventative maintenance project, will there be bike lanes or sidewalk improvements?
Through the president, it's probably too soon in this stage to decide and make that determination. I have taken a look at a couple of the projects. I believe one of them, we probably have enough space to make an existing shoulder, a bike lane. We're not going to know that until we actually get into the design. Same thing with the sidewalks. Sidewalks are a town responsibility for the most part, but as part of the project, we always reach out to the towns and see what their intent is as far as the installation of sidewalks.
Very encouraging to hear. Thank you for that response. And through you, Madam President, to the administration, do we have a time date in mind when the internal policy will be adjusted to reflect true spirit of complete streets? such that it would prioritize or preference bike lanes over shoulder. That's what a complete street would say. And ours does not.
Through you, Madam President, we anticipate the active transportation plan to be done in June. Once that's done, we would expect to, at some point shortly after that, revisit our policy and inform the legislature what we're looking at in terms of sidewalk enhancements and possibly with bike lanes. So we're looking at tying it to the completion of the active transportation plan.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Legislator Bernhardt.
At the planning board meeting, staff said they were waiting to make determinations on the active transportation infrastructure as part of these projects, such as sidewalks and bike lanes, based in part on the active transportation network recommendations, which we are waiting for. It's very clear that some of these roads are almost certainly going to be part of the active transportation network. So it is my hope that as the design phase progresses, active transportation infrastructure is included. And if it's not, we are told, why not? This does present a great opportunity to take a look at these roads and make them accessible for everyone.
Thank you. Go ahead, Legislator. The floor again.
Thank you. Through the president to the administration, just a follow up on Legislator Hebert's question. The cost overrun obligation of the county, is that 5% of the cost overrun or 100% of any cost overrun?
Madam President, it is all the costs of the overrun, but I do want to clarify, the legislator expressed that this is the first time this requirement has come before the legislature. It actually, I believe the first time was in 2019 with the acceptance of 3 ready projects. That was the projects authorized by state DOT pursuant to Lake Ontario flooding. So we have seen these requirements in the past, and they're becoming standard for a number of New York State agencies, including New York State DOT.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 25, referral number 23-0132, authorized contract with Steve General Contractor for construction services for innovative field home clubhouse renovation, batting building, and site upgrades project.
Moved by Legislator McCabe, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Administration, again, simple kind of a question. How is the overall project going? This legislature approved about dollars a while ago for the overall total project, and I'm just wondering how packages are coming together. If 12 million is still adequate to complete.
For you, Madam President, the project is on time and under budget.
I yield.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 29, referral 23-0137.S, requesting the legislature of the state of New York pursuant to Article 9 of the Constitution to enact into a law Senate Bill number S.6149-A, entitled An Act to Amend the Tax Law in relation to extending the authorization for the County of Monroe to impose certain sales and compensating use taxes.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 30, referral number 23-0138.a, requesting the legislature of the state of New York pursuant to Article 9 of the Constitution to enact into law Assembly Bill number A 6142-A, entitled An Act to Amend the Tax Law in relation to extending the authorization for the County of Monroe to impose certain sales and compensating use taxes.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 31, referral 23-0139, appropriating unassigned fund balance, providing promotional services, highlighting regional advantages and authorizing contract amendment with Greater Rochester Visitors Association.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 32, referral 23-0140.s, requesting the legislature of the state of New York pursuant to Article 9 of the Constitution to enact into law Senate Bill number S period 6610-A, entitled An Act in relation to authorizing the city of Rochester to convey by appropriating instruments to the Rochester Pure Waters District an easement in Genesee Valley Park for installation of sanitary sewer facilities.
Moved by Legislator McCabe, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 33, referral 23-0141.s, requesting the legislature of the state of New York pursuant to Article 9 of the Constitution to enact into law Assembly Bill number A 6724, entitled An Act in relation to authorizing the city of Rochester to convey by appropriating instruments to the Rochester Pure Waters District an easement in Genesee Valley Park for installation and maintenance of sanitary sewer facilities.
Moved by Legislator McCabe, seconded by Legislator Smith. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item carries.
Item number 34, referral number 23-0142, appointment to the Monroe County Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee.
Moved by Legislator McCabe, seconded by Legislator Johns. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Legislator Hugh Smith.
Thank you, President Lamar. I wanted to publicly thank the co-leaders, the co-chairs of the committee, former Republican Town Board member Matthew O'Connor and my colleague legislator Michael Udelson for their leadership over what next month, I believe will be the 36th month of the meeting of the Monroe County Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, for the productive environment that they've created, for the bipartisanship, for being a committee that has been apolitical and that has focused solely on the task at hand. I'd like to thank the staff, the students, and my fellow citizen appointees for their time and commitment. And I look forward to seeing the conclusion of that work with the community-wide climate action plan, hopefully later this year. And it is truly my honor to highlight for you and to pass the baton to Akila Bannister, who grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. She loved the environment from an early age, was always puzzled with the dichotomy of the beautiful beaches with, at the same time, oil drilling and oil refinery happening in those same locations and the risk that posed, and who works professionally in the field of emergency preparedness. And as we know, as climate change continues to unfold and the scale and the scope of these natural disasters continue to grow, it is certainly important and valuable work. And I know that Ms. Bannister will be a considerable asset to this committee. Look forward to seeing her on.
Thank you, Legislator Hugh Smith. Go ahead, Legislator Udelson.
Her service on the committee. She's a valuable member, person, friend in the legislature, let alone living her full-time job. Contributions have been invaluable. I thank her for personally look forward to.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? There being no unfinished business, Legislator Brew.
Yes, Madam President, this honorable body stands adjourned. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m.